Planet Jerf.
Greetings, Jerflings. Welcome to Planet Jerf, episode 4. It's been quite a week. Sitting here once again with my off to the side co-host, as well as my sidekick, my dog, who's wearing a down vest like a little fisherman, and he seems totally impressed to be. He has quite the drip. he looks like he wants to jump off a bridge. My wife's working away on stuff. She asked for my opinion on a photo for a post when we were dressed up as gremlins a few years back, and the costume that I was wearing, as she put it, leaves nothing to the imagination. So I was looking through the photos, and I was just trying to decide which photo most accurately and reflected the size of my junk. In the photo I chose to feature on our blog, it looks like I'm smuggling a small cantaloupe. and in my green gremlin tights, so a small cantaloupe with a tiny stem put into my I'm trying to steal it out the no frills. So it's been a pretty interesting week. Earlier in the week, we were driving around, as people do, driving places to different locations in our vehicle, and we were driving, and I still have this cast on because I have this broken arm, and so I had the window down, and I was resting my broken arm outside the window, and we were driving kind of near our neighborhood, and a sign that had been weighted down with what seemed to be a bag of sand got blown in the wind, and we were all of a sudden victims of a major dust, like a Darude sandstorm, like just a ton of sand came into our vehicle and sprinkled my wife's cinnamon flavored treat that she was eating. So she didn't know if it was cinnamon or sand, and it felt like the plague. It felt like there was going to be frogs raining down on us shortly, and vast groups of locusts chasing us around. And when we pulled into the driveway, our handy dandy neighbor Ed was in his driveway, and he asked us, "Hey, what's up?" And we said, "Did you guys experience the sandstorm?" And he had no idea what we were talking about, so we had to kind of recap. And he said, "I guess that's just bad luck." And I was like, "Guess so." It's not a ancient gypsy curse that we've made ourselves subject to for building a home on ancient gypsy graveyard or whatever it is that we've chosen to do here. It's just bad luck, I guess. so that was the beginning of the week. Also, we went to Michael's Crafternoon. We were trying to figure out what to do with the kids, so we took them to Michael's Crafternoon, where you pay a small fee to buy some supplies, and then you have a disinterested teenager standing in a room supervising, quotation marks, while your kids just make an absolute disaster of an art piece that you got to pretend to say is wonderful at the end of it. None of it looked. This art piece they were working on was to make a foam jack-o'-lantern, and yeah, none of the faces were displayable. Luckily, my children's short-term memory is so short that they forgot that they even participated in the activity seconds after entering the entering the van. They forgot we even did that. So $20 well spent. It was a pretty awkward situation in the room because I sat down. Jackie sat down with two of our kids at one end of the table, and there was only space at the other end of the table for my daughter River to sit down. And so I was working with River, and one of the kids who was beside her asked, "What did you do? How did you end up in that cast?" and and I said that I had tripped over the top stair and I hit the landing, and the kid was like, "Well, that was stupid." And and I said, "Well, I think you're pretty stupid." And then I looked over, and this kid had a smidge, just a smidge of had a smidge of Down syndrome. So, just a tad, I guess, and I had to very quickly be like, "Stupid is cool these days." I think you're pretty cool. I meant stupid in the way that you compliment someone. Like, that's pretty ill. That's pretty sick. That's pretty stupid. And she forgave me, and she made a pretty nice pumpkin. Loretta was her name. We became fast friends after that moment. It kind of sucked. It was not cool. Other thing that happened this week, we were in the Tim Hortons drive-thru. Seems to be a reoccurring bit. not just every podcast, but twice a day we're in the Tim Hortons drive-thru, connecting with the Filipino community in our area. And the other day, we went through the drive-thru, and as per usual, we ordered a plain bagel toasted with butter and cream cheese, and we heard, "Let me check for that." And then the lady, Ren is her name. Ren said, "I'm going to go check for this bagel." She comes back and she says, "We don't have a plain bagel, but we have a gorgeous bagel." I said, "A gorgeous bagel?" Is that some new beautiful bagel that Tim Hortons is advertising? And then I realized that she she had said a 4-cheese bagel, but it was very, very, very hard to distinguish between 4-cheese and gorgeous in the way Ren pronounced it. So there is no gorgeous bagel at Tim Hortons. There's just the 4-cheese bagel, and it doesn't look beautiful. It looks like a bunch of globs of cheese melted onto a piece of crusty old bread. So, but I would say that if you're listening to this, one of the executives at Tim Hortons, maybe it's time to make a gorgeous bagel. Maybe you would sell more bagels if you started out with the term gorgeous or fantastic or beautiful. Imagine going to Tim Hortons and getting a gorgeous bagel. I'm sure all bespectacled with gems and stuff like that. I think that would be pretty cool. So Tim Hortons, gorgeous bagel. The other thing happening this week is that my kids found this caterpillar. My son, Oxford, was walking around and he found this caterpillar, and right away he named it Neil. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then he said, "Can we bring it home?" And I was like, I don't know if I want this caterpillar dwelling in where I live. And then he started crying. And then Jackie was like, "I think it's good for them to have pests." to have pests living in the house so they develop an appreciation for life. And so we brought Oxford gathered Neil up into his hand, and he dropped Neil about 7 times on the way back home. So Neil obviously had a little bit of CTE, some post concussion syndrome. But we brought Neil back, and we had a little habitat, a little caterpillar enclosure that we put Neil into, and then Oxford's sisters came back from school, and Jackie's like, "Hey, Oxford, do you want to introduce them to your new little friend?" And so he's like, "Here's Neil," and then the girls just went crazy over Neil, and I thought, oh well, that's an appropriate reaction the first time it happened. But what happened was every time the girls would come back home from school, they would not say, "Hi, Daddy, how was your day?" They would say, "Where's Neil? Show us Neil." And they would run and gather around Neil, looking and poking and prodding at Neil to see if he was thriving in his new habitat. And meanwhile, their daddy, who had worked a hard 6.5 hours with a broken arm, was spoiled meat on the couch as they walked in. They would just ignore me, and I'm thinking, one, how long is Neil going to be around here? Neil is not contributing to the bills. He's not paying any of his dues. Rent is due, motherfucker. Neil got it. So Neil has been the bane of my existence. And sometimes we'll bring him, sometimes we give him some outside time. So we put him in his little habitat outside. And then we put him outside, and there was another storm happened. And so we brought him outside, and then Neil wasn't moving too much. And the kids got all worried, and they're like, "Is Neil okay?" And I just shook the thing a little bit, and Neil was not moving. So I said, "Oh, this is just what caterpillars do before they go into their cocoon-like state. They just stop moving." And they believed me. And then luckily Neil poked his frilly little face out and looked around and then burrowed into the dirt that we created. Neil's eating all of our good fruit. Like, how hungry are these caterpillars? That's like, groceries are expensive. And now I have to have a Neil budget. I'm picking up an extra set of raspberries and kiwis to feed this freeloader. What a crock of shit. And what? At the end of it, we just see him metamorphosize into a caterpillar, and then we just got to release him. Like honestly, the worst. He's the worst Airbnb guest that we could possibly have, because he pays nothing, he adds no value. He's Jackie is just feeling bad for Neil. Neil's eating into your double budget. You're getting one last double per week because Neil has to have all of his bells and whistles in his little enclosure. So I can't wait for him to get into his cocoon so he can get the F out. Another thing that was happening, I'm trying to test the limits of whether I can kind of drive around the block a little bit, and my arm is still in pain, but I have some more motion to it, and I think it's probably good to try and use that motion to see if I can drive. So I said, okay, I'm gonna drive down to the McDonald's, because we live near a McDonald's, and and so I drove, and then I treated myself to the new Trick or Treat McFlurry, which is just it in the picture it looks like the Mona Lisa, the way they present this McFlurry. It has perfectly placed orange Smarties, and then a perfect swirl of fudge. And in reality, the trick or treat McFlurry looks like a cup of diarrhea. It looks so gross. It tastes really good, but it looks super gross. And we got this trick or treat McFlurry, and as we were leaving, a Freedom dude passed us in his Ford F-150, and he had Bon Jovi's "Living on a Prayer" blasting out, and he had two big ass Canadian flags, and he was just blasting it so much, and I still only had one hand, and so Jackie was helping me as my trusty helper. She was helping feed me the McFlurry as I drove, and so I looked over at this guy in the F-150, and I was like, wow, what an entitled asshole. And then I realized that if he looked over at me, all he would be seeing is my white wife, look out for the airplane style, feeding me spoon by spoon a McFlurry. Like I'm some Prince of Persia. It's like I'm some Saudi prince. And I recognize that maybe my anger was a little displaced. And I can't possibly know what that fellow may have thought about me and my situation, living like a king off of the trick-or-treat McFlurries, being spoon-fed it by my Caucasian princess. And maybe that's the moral of this episode here, is that we must not judge until we are willing to look at ourselves, and we must not displace our anger so much, because it's times in these times where in these times we are very quick to be angry with different people, and we shan't judge other people's situations unless we are willing to hold that mirror up to ourselves and examine our situation. And my situation was pretty good. I was also listening to Bon Jovi. It was just on the radio. we were listening. At least we had that in common. We both like CJ92. So look for the commonalities. What am I watching this week? I guess I could have ended the podcast there, but I think it's been like a 15-minute podcast. I'm trying to keep this to under 12 minutes because that keeps me on the free plan for the podcast hosting. And if I go over 12 minutes, I got to pay $12 a month. So but it renews my allotment of time on October 18th. So obviously next week I will reemerge with an extra long podcast. But I'm trying to keep this brief, although I think I've gone over 12 minutes. We were watching the Mr Dressup documentary, and it started off pretty wonderful. And yeah, and then it continued being wonderful. They should have called that guy Mr. Wonderful. Cause I should stayed awake for the whole thing. It was sad. It was sad at the end because sometimes you think people are gonna live forever, and I'm assuming he didn't make it. he didn't beat the odds of living forever, and it was cool to know like which one was Casey and which one was Finnegan. It was, it was cool to see some of the Wonder. They didn't have Strombolopolous on there. I think that was a big mistake because I think that if they had asked Strombo what he thought of Mr. Dressup, I would have liked it because Strombo is so punk rock, and in a way, Mr. Dressup was the original punk rocker. The original Iggy Pop was the guy willing to wear polka dot T-shirts on daytime TV. was the original punk rocker. So big yikes to CBC for not getting Strombo on board to tell us what to think about Mr. Dressup. that's I guess that's it. That's the second moral. Second moral of this whole podcast is that where is Strombo? Where's Strombolopolous? They need to have a Where in the World is Carmen San Diego, but for Where in the World is George Strombolopolous, I would tune in. I'm sure our kids would tune in to figure out where is he's probably he's probably somewhere behind he's probably at a cool show. Oh, my dog just had a stomach grumble, so I think that's my cue to end this podcast. Okay. Oh, wait, sorry.